All right. Hey, fifth grade, it's Miss Bishop, and we're going to be looking at how to classify triangles by looking at angles. We're going to be estimating angles and classifying triangles by angles. So when we look at this first slide, we see lots of different angles, and it should be pretty easy for you to identify the different types of angles. This should be pretty easy. So when you're looking at this angle in your mind, you should be thinking, okay, this is definitely an acute angle. The distance from here to here is definitely acute. Same thing over here. This is definitely an acute angle. And even looking down here, this right here is also an acute angle because your 90 degrees would be right here. Speaking of 90 degrees, we have a 90-degree angle right here. So that's going to be our right triangle. And then, of course, over here, we've got that big wide angle. So that's going to be our obtuse angle. All right, so how are we going to use this knowledge to help us classify triangles? And that's what we're going to look at today. So this looks very similar to the Google assignment that you guys have, and we're going to kind of go through how to think about this. So when you have an angle, you should be estimating, well, what that angle is in degrees. We're going to practice that. And then knowing these different types of angles, we're going to make triangles to help us classify those triangles by angles. But there's lots of different ways. There's actually two ways we can classify triangles, so we're going to look at that before we dive into that activity. So first things first, there are two ways that we can classify our triangles. We can classify it by sides, or we can classify it by angles. So when we're classifying by sides, we're talking about its three sides. So you've got an isosceles, an equilateral, or a scalene triangle. Isosceles triangles have two equal sides. So two of the sides are equal, and that's usually indicated by two lines on either side to let you know, okay, that those sides are equal. The other type of triangle is an equilateral triangle, and equilateral triangles have three equal sides. That means all three sides are equal. So this side, and this side are all equal, same distance. And then finally you have a scalene triangle, and scalene triangles have no equal sides. So all three sides are not the same distance, or the same bless me, are not the same length. So we've got our scalene triangle there. All right, so we've got isosceles, equilateral, and scalene. So if we're classifying by sides, those are the different categories that we would choose. But for today's purpose, we're going to talk about how to classify triangles by their angles. So when we're talking about a triangle, it can be a right triangle, it can be an obtuse triangle, or it can be an acute triangle. So how do we know whether or not it's a right, an obtuse, or an acute triangle? Well, it depends on the angles. So a right triangle has one right angle. So if it's a right triangle, it's going to have a right angle. Pretty simple. So if there's at least one right angle, it's a right triangle. An obtuse triangle has one obtuse angle and two acute angles. So if you look at a triangle and you see that obtuse angle, you know it's an obtuse triangle. Even if it has acute angles. If it has that obtuse angle, it's an obtuse triangle. And then finally we have our acute triangle. An acute triangle has three acute angles. That means that all three angles within the triangle are acute, meaning that they're less than 90 degrees. So let's go back to that slide that helps us with figuring out our different types of triangles. So if we look at this angle right here, we know for sure this is definitely an acute triangle, acute angle. So I'm just going to put an A right here to remind me of that. So this is an acute angle. So what is the estimate of this angle right here? So if we had to guess, so my 90 degrees would be right about there. I know that it's not exactly straight, but it'll do. So I'm going to estimate that this angle right there is probably about 45 degrees. That's probably a good estimate for that angle. I'm looking at this angle right here and I'm thinking, okay, well, this is definitely an obtuse angle. Okay, and I know my 90 degrees is about right here. So this is probably about 110 degrees, maybe 115 degrees as a good estimate. Okay, When I look at this angle right here, I can clearly see that this is a right angle. So I'm going to put an R for right angle. And I know right angles measure exactly 90 degrees. And then finally we have right here we have another acute angle. So I'm going to put my A here for acute. I know that 90 degrees would be right there. So this is really close to 90, so it's probably about 80 degrees. So whenever you're looking at angles in your mind, we should be doing a lot of estimating because we haven't exactly learned how to use protractors yet, but estimating angles is a good way to kind of have an idea of what that angle would measure before you learn how to use a protractor. All right, so how can we use this information that we just did to help us classify triangles? So what we're going to do is I'm going to take this angle and I'm going to draw a line from these 2 points to make a triangle. So now I have a triangle, 1, 2, 3 sides. Now, what angles do I see inside of my triangle? Well, I know that this angle right here was an acute angle, which means that this angle, kind of looking at it from the side, is probably acute, and this side is an acute angle. So I can clearly see that all 3 of these angles are going to be less than 90 degrees. That means they're going to be all acute angles. So when I have a triangle with 3 acute angles, I know that's going to be an acute triangle. So that's how we classify angles, triangles, by the type of angles that they have. All right, so let's look at this angle right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to connect these dots right here to make a triangle. So now we have 1, 2, 3 sides. We just connected those 2 rays to make a triangle. And what type of triangle is this going to be based on the angle? Well, I can clearly see that this triangle has an obtuse angle. That's the same obtuse angle that we estimated over here. So we can actually stop right there. We know that if I have an obtuse angle in a triangle, then this is going to be an obtuse triangle. Okay. All right, so looking down here, same thing. We're going to just kind of connect these 2 lines, 2 rays. Kind of a bad line, but it'll do. All right, so we've made a triangle, and in this triangle, here's 1, 2, 3 sides. When I look at this triangle, I see, oh, look, we have a right angle. So because this triangle has a right angle, we can stop right there, because we know when a triangle has a right angle, it's going to be a right triangle. Makes it pretty easy and simple. Okay, and then finally, looking at this angle right here, we see that we have an acute angle right here, which we figured out over here. We estimated that to be 80 degrees. So we're going to just connect these 2 lines right here, which means that this right here, this triangle, is going to have an acute angle here. And this over here is definitely an acute angle. And this angle over here is definitely an acute angle here. So in this triangle, we definitely have another acute angle. Another acute angle. Okay, so what we just did is use our knowledge of angles and estimating angles to classify triangles by the different types of angles that they are. So when we have 3 acute angles, like we have here, we have an acute triangle. When we have a triangle with 1 obtuse angle, it is always an obtuse triangle. When we have a triangle with 1 right angle, that is always a right triangle. And when we have a triangle with 3 acute angles, like we set up here, we always have an acute triangle. Oh, wait, this should have said triangle, sorry. Triangle, thank you. All right, well, if you have any questions, let me know. and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.